Leafs fans, today you're going to follow 3 stories that could shake up the team's preseason. There's concern about injury, a young prospect trying to secure his spot on the roster, and changes that could affect the entire structure of the squad. Stick around until the end so you don't miss a single detail. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to get the latest news. News 1. There's a different kind of energy in the air. And at the center of it all is Auston Matthews, the face of the franchise, the symbol of hope, the man who, when healthy, is simply unstoppable. But the big question everyone is asking is Matthews ready to reclaim his place as the best player in the NHL? Since arriving in the league in 2016-17, Matthews built a reputation as an instant superstar, magical debuts, 40-goal seasons right out of the gate, and a meteoric rise that put him among the most feared names in world hockey. But along with all that glory, one detail has always followed him: health. In nearly a decade, Matthews managed to play more than 75 games only twice. For a player of his caliber, that's both frustrating and fascinating. Frustrating because the Leafs know they could have gotten even more from him. Fascinating because even with constant absences, Matthews always delivered elite numbers. And nothing illustrates that better than the contrast between his last 2 seasons. In 2023-24, he reached the peak of his career. 81 games, 69 goals, 107 points. A historic season. He led the NHL in goals, was a finalist for both the Lady Byng and the Zelka, and proved that beyond being a natural scorer, he could also be a reliable defensive player. Despite the hockey still world playing at a high level, its perfect machine represents a short-term. But then came 2024-25. Right at training camp, an upper body injury sidelined him for 15 games. When he returned, Matthews still shone, but within a human standard. 33 goals, 78 points in 67 games. For almost any other forward in the league, those numbers would be a reason to celebrate. For Matthews, they were seen as a disappointment. That's why the summer of 2025 brought a breath of fresh air. In interviews, Matthews said he was completely healthy, trained without restrictions, and once again felt his body responding the way it needed to. His coach, Craig Berube, was clear. He's stronger, more engaged, heavier on pucks. You can see a small difference there. Small but significant. For those who know Matthews, that's more than just a detail. It's a sign that he may be on the verge of regaining dominance over the NHL. The catch is that this time the situation in Toronto has also changed. For the first time in nearly a decade, Auston Matthews won't have Mitch Marner by his side. The duo that defined the Leafs for years is now just a memory. In training camp, Berube kept Matthews alongside Matthew Knies and Matias Maccelli. A new, bold line that mixes youth and talent, but still lacks the built-in chemistry Matthews and Marner carried almost effortlessly. The bet is clear. Knies, the young prospect, brings energy and physicality, while Maccelli offers vision and skill. But the burden of making this work rests entirely on the shoulders of number 34. This challenge raises an inevitable question. What will Matthews look like without Marner? In recent years, we've seen an almost telepathic connection between the two, with Marner creating plays and Matthews finishing them with his lethal wrist shot. Now, he'll have to reinvent that dynamic. Can Knies become that new partner? Can Maccelli adapt to Toronto's intense pace? Or will Max Domi, once fully recovered, take on that role beside him? The questions don't yet have answers, but one thing is clear. Matthews will have to be the catalyst for this transformation. Speaking of style, it's impossible not to highlight what makes Auston Matthews so unique. His wrist shot isn't just quick, it's almost invisible to goalies. He can fire in motion from impossible angles with a precision that recalls Ovechkin's golden days, but with his own twist. Beyond that, his defensive evolution in recent years has brought him closer to players like Patrice Bergeron in terms of two-way impact. Matthews isn't just a scorer. He's one of the most complete centers in the NHL today. And then there's the contract factor. Matthews plays on one of the biggest salaries in the league, $13.25 million per season, in a deal signed in 2023. That financial weight means Toronto cannot afford to see an average year from its star. The fans demand greatness. The front office demands results. and the entire city puts its hope on him to finally break the curse haunting the Leafs since 1967, the year of their last Stanley Cup. From a tactical perspective, Berube has already signaled his plan. Matthews will be the engine of the first unit power play, surrounded by Knies, possibly Domi, and Morgan Reilly. That puts him back into the role of primary finisher, and if health really holds up, it's not an exaggeration to project another 60-plus goal season. On the penalty kill, despite his defensive ability, the plan is to save his energy for decisive moments. Even so, in critical face-off situations, especially late in games, it wouldn't be a surprise to see him out there. The absence of Marner, however, isn't just tactical, it's emotional. They were close friends, longtime teammates, two pieces that grew together on and off the ice. The separation inevitably creates a void, and Matthews needs to prove he can lead on his own. The upside is that players like Knies have already shown complete confidence in him. He goes into every season with the same mindset. He wants to be the best and lead us, said the young forward, reflecting the locker room atmosphere. The outlook for Matthews in 2025-26 is both exciting and risky. If he stays healthy, he can compete toe-to-toe with Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, and Nikita Kucherov for the title of league scoring leader and best player. But if injuries return, the weight of his contract and the absence of Marner could turn the season into a nightmare for the Leafs. The margin for error is razor thin. And that's exactly where the beauty of the story lies. Auston Matthews isn't just a player. He's the fate of a franchise. His health, his form, his leadership, all will define what Toronto becomes this season. The NHL already knows what he's capable of. The question now isn't if he can shine, but whether he can do it when it matters most. When the camera zooms in on him on the ice, what you see is an athlete who seems reborn. His movement is light, his shot is back at its peak, and confidence radiates in every play. Toronto waits anxiously. Matthews is back, stronger, healthier, and more determined. He has already proven he can be the best in the world. But only one question remains. Will 2025-26 be the year Auston Matthews not only reclaims the scoring crown, but also leads the Maple Leafs to finally break the nearly six-decade curse and lift the Stanley Cup? News 2. Toronto is getting ready to open its preseason, traveling to Ottawa to face the Senators. But while the puck drops for the first time in months, the franchise's real concern remains at home. The team is starting this new cycle already dealing with key absences, some of them in critical positions. Simon Benoit and Nick Roy are facing physical issues right at the start, and even though Roy and Max Domi have already returned to the ice after recent scares, the biggest shadow right now is the absence of Joseph Woll, the young goaltender, who is expected to be a key piece once again in 2025-26, has been out of practice in recent days due to illness. He did not travel with the group to Ottawa and, according to reports, is still not in condition to resume his rhythm. For those who have followed Woll's career, this feels both familiar and worrying. In his short career, he has already missed too much time with injuries, including the entire first month of last season. For a team that relies heavily on the stability of its goaltending duo, any setback in this area rings alarm bells early. It's worth remembering that Woll played a decisive role in 2024-25. He appeared in 41 games with solid numbers. 27 wins, 14 losses, 1 overtime loss, a 2.73 goals against average, and a .909 save percentage. These stats, combined with Anthony Stolarz' performance, gave the Leafs the kind of consistency in net that had been missing for years. Together, they managed to establish marks that reignited the fans' belief that Toronto had finally found stability in a historically turbulent position. That's why even if this current absence isn't a serious injury, the very fact that Woll is once again dealing with health problems at the start of the season creates unease. Despite still playing at a high level, adjustments represent a short-term building chemistry, but above all, it's about ensuring players are ready for opening night. Toronto already knows the cost of losing its starting goalie for weeks or months, and Woll's recent track record makes any setback more sensitive. Craig Berube, who arrive at the mission of bringing a tougher, more resilient mentality to group, must face this reality right away. The roster has depth, but goaltending stability is one of the cornerstones of the campaign the Leafs hope to build. Stolarz showed in 2024-25 that he can share responsibilities, and Dennis Hildebrand is an option for select nights. But the blueprint inevitably depends on Wall being healthy and at his best. Without that, the structure wobbles. The good news is the season hasn't even started yet, and there's time for recovery. Missing the Ottawa trip hardly mattered in practical terms. The group that traveled wasn't the main roster, and Wall likely wouldn't have been in net anyway. The concern is the pattern. The virus that circulated through the locker room last season now seems to have affected only the goalie, and the Leafs hope it won't spread. More importantly, they hope this episode isn't a sign of yet another campaign marked by absences in decisive moments. Toronto enters 2025-26 with the mission of turning talent into results, and that requires health, consistency, and trust. With Matthews healthy, signs point to him being ready to carry the attack. But in goal, Wall needs to be there to hold down the other end. While the team skates in Ottawa and fans watch the new offensive combinations, the silent hope is that back home, Joseph Wall quickly clears his hurdle. The season has barely begun, and the Leafs cannot afford to once again start the race at a disadvantage. News 3. Toronto is experiencing yet another moment where past and future intersect on the ice. The 2025 training camp brought injuries, adjustments, and lineup experiments, but it also raised a question that could shape the franchise's immediate path. Is Easton Cowan ready to be an NHL player now? The 20-year-old arrives at camp carrying the confidence of having been the MVP of the Memorial Cup with the London Knights last season, and since then, his name hasn't stopped circulating. The general manager and coach have praised his work ethic and maturity, but perhaps even more weight comes from words inside the locker room. Veteran and leader Morgan really clearly stated that he sees a stronger, more confident young player ready to challenge men. John Tavares went further, highlighting Cowan's understanding of NHL standards, knowing he doesn't need to force anything to show talent because his work ethic naturally lets his skills shine. When leaders like these extend their support, it's a sign that the young player isn't just drawing attention, he's earning respect. Still, the path won't be simple. Cowan will need to shine in the upcoming preseason games to convince management that keeping him in the AHL with the Toronto Marlies is no longer worthwhile. The question is one of development. Does putting him on NHL ice now accelerate his growth, or could it burn him out too soon? To complicate things, he has been lined up alongside Dakota Joshua, a newly arrived winger with a physical, straight-ahead style that could complement Cowan's creative qualities. At center, another new name, Nicholas Roy, though recently injured, is also projected for this line. During Saturday's practice, Mason Shaw ended up occupying the spot. Imagine this configuration. An entire third line made up of players who weren't on the roster despite still playing at a high level. Represents a short-term, all try and prove their worth. Joshua with his strength, Roy with his reliability, Cowan with his potential. It's risky, but also intriguing. It could inject a shock of energy into a team often criticized for relying too heavily on the same stars. At the same time, there's a logic of letting Cowan mature in the AHL without the immediate pressure of carrying weight on a team under the Canadian media microscope. The dilemma is clear. If Cowan stays, Toronto adds a young, dynamic piece with a very high ceiling at the start of the 2025-26 season. If he goes to the Marlies, he will have time to dominate at the lower level and arrive even more prepared in a few months. Either way, the very fact that this debate is happening shows just how much his impact is already being felt. While the veterans offer words of encouragement and fans dream of a bright future, management must weigh the risks and rewards. Toronto is looking for quick answers, but Cowan's development could be a long-term investment. Training camp is still underway. Preseason games are expected to provide clearer insights, and deep down, perhaps no one expects a definitive answer right now. But one thing is certain. Easton Cowan is no longer just a promising prospect. At this moment, he represents the most important decision the Maple Leafs must make before the season begins.